Hello and welcome to RoadCraft demo. And I am here in the map of the third mission in order to demonstrate how to build a road. Because the clue is in the name of the game, we are building roads. In front of me here, there is supposed to be a road. Except that, well, it's a bit flooded, and that's a little inconvenient. So I'm going to solve this problem today by building a road. So I am going to be using these tools in front of me here in order to build an actual road. First vehicle that we're going to need in order to build the road is this. This is the Tega 6455B. It is a dump truck, and what we can do is pour sand. As you can see, the back is full of sand, and if I lift this up a bit, I can pour some sand. Unfortunately, pouring sand in this game is a bit silly, and it is rather all or nothing. You can't pour out a constant fine stream, you just kind of have to wobble it and hope that you can shake out a little bit and not too much. Now obviously we're going to need a load more sand because we've got to cover the whole thing, but what I'm actually going to do first is swap to the Cronenwork L34, which is totally not the Kiravet's tractor from SnowRunner flipped around with a scoop on it. And what we can do with this is put it on sand flattening mode, which, guess what, flattens sand. So I can now just drive at the sand and flatten this out, so now it doesn't have giant bumps in it. And then we can swap back to the dump truck and get some more sand. Now, in the demo at least, I can refill sand from most of the map. I imagine that in the full game there will be more restrictions on where you can actually get sand, because currently it just appears out of nowhere. So obviously we're going to make some more piles of sand, and I should probably have started with the one further back. So we've only got 2 from this. Hopefully it'll be fine. Hopefully I haven't got it stuck. So now I'm going to swap back to the tractor. In theory, you don't have to swap back and forth between them. There is no obligation to, but I find that it makes it a lot easier to build the road nice and smooth if you keep smoothing it. But as you can see, my pile of sand has created a bit of a mound here, and if the camera could please behave, we can see that I'm smoothing it out, but it's not perfectly smooth. So I'm going to have to drive back and forth quite a few times, but I'll do that as I smooth out the next load of sand. So I think I've started getting a bit off center and a bit wonky, and the sand is not being equal on either side of the road. So I'm going to go and smooth it, because you end up just oscillating. If your sand is to one side and you put more sand down, it's just going to push it to the other side, and you just end up going to wobble backwards and forwards in a bit of a feedback loop. So in order to avoid that, just going to go and flatten it now. And now I'm just going to finish off the rest of the sand pouring. So a few truckfuls of sand and a few passes backwards and forwards with the grader, and I now have a decently flat surface. Most mistakes you can make in the pouring of the sand can be rectified by driving the grader backwards and forwards a few more times. So now we have a nice flat bit of sand, and in theory we could just leave it like this and drive on it, and it would actually work pretty well. The sand is quite compact, you can drive on it, it's not going to sink underneath you, but obviously there is more to it than that. Because what we want now is the asphalt paver. So we press the activate button, and now we are pouring down this layer of asphalt on top of the sand. And it kind of has a range underneath it that it'll pave, so the amber off the edge of my pile of sand will not all get covered in asphalt. It will kind of miss the bits that are too low. So obviously I'm going to need a second pass to the other side of the road, but I'm accidentally pouring asphalt kind of everywhere off the edges of the road. I should probably turn it off to turn around. Controls for this thing are a bit weird because obviously it's tank tracks, but you're not playing it with 2 forwards and backwards, you're playing it with forwards, backwards, left, right. So, it's a little bit odd to use, but you get used to it eventually. And so we are coming to the end of the road here, and it is just a thick black line. And let's turn that off before I cover more of the random dirt in asphalt. The ground doesn't mind. And now it's time for the final vehicle, the asphalt roller. It's just a big heavy thing with metal wheels, and this is what makes it an actual nice road surface. As you can see, it just makes it way smoother. So in theory I could get a bit closer to the edge, but I don't really need to pave the sides of my mound of dirt because I'm not planning on driving on the sides of the mound of dirt. And an interesting thing to note with this roller is it flattens from the back wheel only until you go backwards, then it flattens from the front wheel only. That's a bit of a strange little gameplay mechanic, but that's something to be aware of because sometimes it's useful and sometimes it's really not. Unfortunately, it appears that I have made my road just slightly too wide to be comfortably done in 2 passes, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to do more than 2 passes anyway, because the road can be made smoother with this thing as well, because although the road is fairly flat, it's probably not all that smooth. So we're going to ignore the strip in the middle, and I'll come back and do another pass, or more than one pass, to flatten things off and make the road smoother. So I've just tidied up that middle strip, and honestly it doesn't look too bad. But there's a few little bumps that I can see in it that I can try and iron out with this, but just because of how the nature of paving the edge of the road works, it's always going to be a little bit bumpy at the edge, and the more you try and fix that, the worse it seems to get sometimes. It tries to smooth out the bumps at the edge and just ends up moving the bumps somewhere else, and I would rather have them at the edge of the road than in the middle of the road. And you can kind of see there's now a line that goes down in front of me here, going down the road, because it's trying to smooth out a line of bumps and has just moved them. So we're just going to roll over them again and keep rolling over them until they look better. Probably good enough. It really does not have to be perfect, unless you want it to be perfect, in which case good luck, because the tools that we have at our disposal don't seem to let you make it perfect. And I will come pick up the roller in a minute if I need to make another road using the one vehicle that we haven't used, which is a step pike. In this game it's a transporter. So the asphalt paver and the roller do not like going off-road. They are absolutely useless, surprisingly enough, at going through mud. So we have this thing to carry them around. I'm also just going to use this thing to test out the road. So, you know, it looks pretty smooth. No issues whatsoever. It's a little bit bumpy to the edges, just because of the nature of the roller. Every time you try and smooth it, you can never quite get it perfect by the looks of it. But functionally, this road works well enough. Quite smooth, quite flat, keeps you above the water, drive on it much easier. You may have actually seen it in the background, but I have built another one over here. This is a very similar situation. There was a road that was underwater, just mud underwater, and so I covered it in sand. And as you can tell, this one is definitely less smooth. There's some lumps and bumps in it. This was my practice one before I built the one over there, so to make sure I knew exactly what I was doing, and to test out whether or not things like the roller will flatten sand. It won't. The roller only flattens sand once you've put asphalt on it. I've also done some slightly less serious road building down here, because the game kind of lets you do whatever you want, which is amazing. And so there's a little problem over here, which is that you have these sort of river gullies, and they're very deep. You cannot drive through them. So I covered that in sand, and then there was a pylon, and the pylon was blocking the path, so I covered it in sand. And then there was some more rivers, So I covered them in sand, and then I paved the whole thing. And then I built a bridge. Yeah, you can just build bridges wherever you want. Within reason, to some extent. If I go over to the bridge building thing, I can't build it here because it's not high enough, which is why there's a mound at this end. Because it doesn't let you just put a bridge clipping through the ground or whatever. So I had to build and up a little bit at this end. If you want to deal with this pylon, perhaps there will be a better way to do it in the full game. But with demo, I have just built a road over the top of it. Jumped over to the second map to demonstrate the first road that I've built. This is my first attempt, and as you can see, it is neither flat nor smooth. There are weird bumps. Why is there a giant hill here? I don't know. It's a bit dodgy at the end, it's a bit dodgy in the middle. It's pretty terrible, but you know, it's a learning experience. I'm sure we will get very good at building roads after playing the main game for a few hundred hours. And I also forgot to pave the end over here with the roller. And then, because I felt like it, I built something else. I built a giant mound. A giant mound of sand, which I then paved. Because why not? So here is a giant mound of asphalt, except it's not actually a giant mound of asphalt. It's a giant mound of sand covered in a thin layer of asphalt, and this just looks silly, doesn't it? But this is well within the realms of possibility. This was not difficult to make. It just took about half an hour of dumping sand. And this is also a good demonstration of the stability of vehicles in this game, because look at this, somehow it's not falling over. It looks kind of weird how it's like fighting gravity in order to not fall over, because the stability of vehicles in this game is significantly higher than SnowRunner. But obviously, these are the kind of roads that you're actually going to be building in this game. Simply a path over a difficult bit of terrain, so that you can get your vehicles around easier. Because this is way easier. And it's not even that difficult to make. But that is going to be it for this video. So, thank you for watching. Don't get distracted. Go subscribe now, and until next time, goodbye.